When I'm out of town and I tell people that I'm from Toledo, Ohio, uh, what I always tend to brag about is the Toledo Art Museum, the Toledo Zoo, the G Plant, the Mud Hens. And one thing I always mention is Mancy's Restaurant. And we're lucky today to have with us Gus Mancy, the owner of Mancy's Restaurant in Toledo. And Mancy's has been known as the first family of restaurants of quality in Toledo. Thanks for being here with us today, Gus.
Good morning. Thanks, Chuck. Nice to see you.
So let's talk initially. If somebody's been asleep for the last 25 years, maybe you could tell us about how many different Mancy's restaurants there are in Toledo.
Sure. There's about as many as there are third generation people that are working the business. I got back in 1989. My cousin Mike and I have been running the steakhouse since then. And in 97, we started Mancy's Italian. My brother George joined us after college and a stint with the Bravo Restaurant Group for several years. And we started Mancy's Italian. My brother John had come back from Philly about that same time and was our chef at Mancy's Steakhouse. And while he was in Philly, he was an executive chef at Morton's Steakhouse. I think most people have heard of Morton's in most big cities. So these guys came back with a bunch of knowledge, raring to go, and that was our impetus to build Mancy's Italian at 97. In 03, cousin Nick came back, and Shorty's Barbecue was born. And in 05, Mancy's Blue Water. And then recently, Mancy's Finley 2017. And then also Mancy's Ideal 2018. So we've been busy beginning of the millennial and now in the last few years opening up some restaurants. But we're going to put that on pause now, and we're going to wait for the fourth generation to come on board and see what they can do.
So everybody always talks about the American dream, and your family is actually, one of the best examples I've ever heard of the American dream. For people that don't know the story, maybe you could tell them.
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to talk about my grandfather. Immigrated from Greece in 1917 as a young man, 17 years old. Imagine getting on an ocean liner, a 3-week voyage, and getting to New York City. New York City, when he got there, he came from a small village in Crete, and it was very loud, chaos, noisy, lots of people. He'd never seen anything like it before. His parents told him, if you didn't like New York and get the right job, go to Toledo, Ohio. There's some Greek people from our village, and you can hook up with them. Well, after about 3 weeks in New York, he did that. He came to Toledo. And by the time he bought the train ticket from New York to Toledo, he seriously and truly had $1 in his pocket. From there, he worked hard for about 4 or 5 years to save money and opened up Mancy's, actually was The Ideal in 1921, later morphed into Mancy's Ideal and then just simply Mancy's. So since 1921, we've been building this restaurant company.
So one thing I think that's interesting about your family is oftentimes there's a business where, let's say, one generation starts the business and other generations maybe continue it on, maybe make it a little bit better. Your family, it seems generation after generation have new ideas, and not that the old restaurant wasn't fantastic, but you've had a lot of really smart ideas, and each generation has made the Mancy's name better and better. Why is that?
Well, I think one of the second generation had set this kind of rule that go out, get educated, go work for somebody else, And I remember clearly and plainly my Uncle George saying, go take your lumps from somebody else besides me. My Uncle George was my dad's twin brother. And, we all did that. We went out, got out of Toledo, got a little education. And then we all worked for another restaurant company for several years before coming back to the family business. So I think you get out, you get exposed to different ideas, how corporate restaurants run, the efficiencies from a corporate standpoint, but then also the care and nurturing that a family restaurant, an independent restaurant can provide. And I think we talk about it often, having both those elements in our business, where there's some structure and important business philosophies that we follow. But then also that family, the care and the interaction with our staff, in some nice family philosophies that we've learned in the past. So I think all of us have brought something back and contributed immensely to our growth, and then each restaurant's unique difference.
So did you work in the family restaurant as a little kid, or why don't you talk about your journey?
Well, I can speak for everyone. We all did. We were all in high school working here. Whether it was my very first job here was working in the wine room. I'd work 3 nights a week. My cousin Mike would work 3 nights a week, and we'd get a little chit from the server, and then we'd retrieve the wine, red wine, white wine. We'd keep a running inventory. And we were 12, 13 years old doing this, and we'd get our homework done. That job then led into dishwashing, being a busboy, being a server, being a cook, appetizer cook, a broiler cook. We all worked throughout the entire Mancy Steakhouse when we were young and in high school, for sure. George, John, Mike, my cousin Nick, Mike's my cousin too, and myself.
And I think that's really brilliant because, there probably isn't a job in the place that you haven't done firsthand. So you have a lot of credibility with all your workers.
Well, I'd say we're all pretty hands-on, whether during COVID, we've all grabbed a knife and prepped something or cooked something. There were some, it's been a very challenging couple of years. And those skills that we had 20 years ago and 30 years ago, it's like riding a bike. They come right back with you when you have to roll up your sleeves and get things done. And I know all of us are hands-on regardless, but the last 2 years have been especially challenging.
So maybe you could explain what specific challenges has Mancy's had, let's say, in the last couple of years.
Sure. Well, having COVID strike our country and the world, and then being closed for 12 weeks was surreal being in this restaurant during those 12 weeks, doing some to-go business. My cousin Mike and I took most of the orders. We had one chef, our chef Mike, and a pantry chef here working with us. So just 4 people usually. And it was very surreal being here for those 11, 12 weeks. Then all of a sudden, instantly supply chain issues happen. We've been very fortunate when we reopened May 21st of 2020, every one of our staff members came back, and we truly appreciated that. Over those following few months, as the pandemic continued on, and there were some staff members based on family needs or husband getting promoted and reevaluating their lives. So we had to replace people that had resigned with plenty of notice, but it was very difficult at that point in time to then go out and hire and staff the restaurant. Actually, we were very busy during that time, and we had 75% of our seating available but people were coming at 4 o'clock and 5 o'clock to avoid the big crowd, or maybe they were coming at 8 o'clock. And so the whole night during that COVID time in 2020, after the reopening, we were really busy, if that makes sense. But it's challenging. And even today, 2 years later, every day there's a supply chain issue and prices going up. Labor is obviously a big input in our business, and any restaurant person will tell you that they're experiencing labor cost increases along with all these other increases. Plastic to-go items have doubled in price. Beef is up anywhere from 20 to 70%. Good beef. You go to the grocery store, look at the price of hamburger. So every day there's something that kind of, you walk into work and it kind of whacks you in the face and you have to deal with something. I've already had to do that before I got on the phone call or the Zoom with you today.
Today there are so many corporate change. There's so much competition in the market. There seems to be just more restaurants and even high-end restaurants in Toledo than ever before. How do you compete on quality customer service? And I think the big thing that you guys are always known for is just the total atmosphere and experience. But how do you compete?
Sure. First, just hiring great people, right? We need great people to provide great service, to build great plates of food, and that constant interaction that we have. We're in our restaurants, we're interviewing people. We're not pushing all responsibility off to our managers. We are managing our restaurants with our managers. So I think that's a competitive advantage. Relationships with purveyors and having strong relationships with our meat purveyors and our seafood purveyors. One instance, Foley's Fish out of Boston. We've had a 30-year relationship with Foley's Fish. I just spoke to the owner in Boston yesterday because of a supply chain issue, and very proactive and a very positive professional talk, and they're going to solve this issue. So having a loyal staff is great, but you need great relations with your purveyors, knowing you're getting the best quality and the best possible pricing. And it's a combination of all that. Even our relationship with our electrician and our refrigeration repair people is strong, and it's so important. And that's one of the things when I go back and I look at the whole package, how to run a restaurant. It's very difficult in putting this package together and learning this whole ensemble of things that you have to do is important. And that's one thing that we're stressing to the fourth generation now is this is a very complex business with a lot of moving parts.
So when I was talking about your vision for the future, you indicated it's the next generation. Does the next generation, are they interested in becoming involved in the business, or do you have to be persuaded? Do you have to persuade them, or they're looking forward to it?
Well, I don't think we want to push anybody into something that they don't want to do. First and foremost, I just spent a little bit of time explaining the pros and cons to my 25-year-old daughter about the restaurant business and what she's doing now, and she's in Columbus working hard. Just graduated from the university here with her MBA and got a great job. And if she ever wants to come back to the restaurant business, doors open. But there's a whole world of possibilities out there for her. And not to push anybody away from the business, but we definitely have, each one of us has a son working in the business now, getting educated, just got educated, and cousin Nick, his son George, my brother George, his son Andrew is out working for the Aspen Hospitality Company in Aspen, Colorado now. My son John has Oh, I said George Andrew. I meant George Nicholas is in Aspen. Brother John's son is helping to manage Stubborn Brother right now with the general manager there. My cousin Mike's son is working with us, and I have a son who is just finishing up high school, so the youngest one out of that whole bunch. So, long story short, it looks like there's 5 Mancys in the 4th generation that are very business oriented and moving towards the restaurant business.
So I know that there must be a lot of really interesting stories or funny stories. Could you tell us, some of the better stories, or at least a couple for the audience?
Sure, I'll try to be brief. I'll try to get a couple in. After World War II, Christmas Eve, World War II had ended. It's Christmas Eve. My uncle, Nick Graham, who was partners with my grandfather, Gus Mancy, they decided to close a restaurant on Christmas Eve. Now, the restaurant since 1921 had been open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. They went to lock the back door and the front door. They had no keys. They had to call a locksmith out. And I think that's a testament to the hard work that any first generation business has to go through to be successful. These guys worked 7 days a week, 12-hour shifts. They were always at the restaurant, open all night long, and had never locked the restaurant. Second quick story, my grandfather, whether you like them or not, the Licavoli gang used to eat here at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning after they'd closed their businesses, whether it was a bar or a brothel or a gambling place. I don't know what they did, but they came and ate dinner here, not like once a week, but often. And I remember vividly my grandfather telling me that story, and that also, as long as he served them good food, they never asked for any payola. And the businesses up and down Sylvania Avenue and Phillips, very busy corridor, or whether you were downtown, back then, not only did you have the police to protect you, but if you gave like $5 a month to the gang, they would protect you too. And true Toledo story. One more quick one. What year did Jimmy Hoffa disappear? 73 or 76? I forget now. 76 was a few months before he disappeared. There was a big meeting in our private dining room. Guys from Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, they all met here. Jimmy Hoffa was with them. I'm not going to say any last names because they may be watching this podcast. But they were here. They had dinner. The funny story that the second generation told us was our servers served them drink and food. They brought in their own girls with cigars and cigarettes, and they lit their cigars and cigarettes topless that evening. So they were in private dining room, so nobody else in the restaurant saw them, but that's a true Mancy story.
So could you talk about the fact that Mancy's has a reputation as being a fantastic community citizen? Could you talk about your community and charitable involvement of the Mancy's family?
Sure, love to. I think one thing that we've been able to do, the third generation, is to focus in on different areas that we all enjoy, contributing our time and energy and effort to. And one thing personally I've loved to do in the last 25 years is the Taste of the Nation, and then it morphed into becoming the Zest. And during the 25 years that I helped to either co-chair or be on the committee, and being very involved with this event, along with some other great civic-minded restaurateurs and chefs, we've raised over $2.4 million. Now, that event has been on pause the last 2 years because of COVID, and I'm hoping that we can revitalize that soon, because there were some great charities that benefited every year from the event. And other things too. When we get out into the community and do a small event or do a food tasting or contribute a gift card, we all do that individually and independently, and we all have different organizations that we love. Ann Grady is one of them. Since my Uncle George passed in 1996, we've done a golf outing every year with Ann Grady. Usually 100 guys show up, and we do it in memory of my uncle, but all the money goes to Ann Grady, and we usually raise a good chunk of change every year for Ann Grady.
So Gus, I appreciate you being on with us today. I recommend to anybody, if you want the best quality food and atmosphere in Toledo, in Northwestern Ohio, you want to go to one of the Mancys restaurants. And I'm sure you're honored that, your name Mancy is equivalent to an adjective for just quality. So thanks for being with us today, Gus.
Chuck, thanks for your time. I have, one thing, great food and great service is important that you mentioned. But if we don't provide honest value, I think some of it gets lost. So I'd like to add that, we're so conscious about what we are doing, and we just appreciate everyone's support. We're conscious about quality, about service, and about providing that honest value. So thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I appreciate all the kind gestures, kind questions, and compliments. Thank you.
Thank you.